Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. I'm Cheryl van Daalen-Smith, Associate Dean Academic with the Faculty of Grad Studies here at York University. I'm so thrilled that you're here, and more are coming in rapidly, which is fantastic. Today is part of our Choose Grad York campaign. And today you're going to learn about grad school from 3 alumni, meaning 3 people just like you that got accepted. They said, I'm going to choose York, and they completed successfully. And so today what we're going to be doing is asking them specific questions to respond to that folks in your position want to know. Maybe it's about financial resources. Maybe it's about challenges. Maybe it's about surprises that happened along the way. Maybe it's about their decision making. So stay tuned. We're going to be asking them questions and they'll respond to them. You also have the ability to use the Q&A where you can be asking questions, and some of them, depending on our time, of course, we'll be able to answer live for you. Others of them, which might not really be about the webinar, but questions that you have, our team behind the scenes is ready to answer questions in the Q&A. So with that, what I'm going to do is ask our 3 alumni panelists to introduce themselves. They're going to tell us a little bit about themselves, and then we're going to get started. And I think I'd like to start with Ariella.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. My name is Ariella Markus. I have an MA in Interdisciplinary Studies. I graduated in October of 2023, and interdisciplinary studies is where you need to have, you're combining 3 disciplines in a unique way for a unique course of study. So my disciplines were education, religion, and gender feminist studies. My research was on prayer education. More specifically, it was prayer education in Jewish day schools, where that's part of the curriculum, and how girls are taught to pray, because that might be different than boys. Long term, how does prayer relate to leadership and community in adulthood? So it was about prayer, but more broadly, the research was about equity and participation and about gender roles.
Cool, thank you. And how about Sehrish? Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody in the audience?
Hi everyone, my name is Sehrish, Sehrish Malik, and I did just a bit of trajectory of, I did 3 undergrad degrees in psychology, humanities, and women's studies, a master's degree in women's studies, a PhD in humanities with 2 graduate diplomas, one in Asian studies and comparative literature studies, all at York University. That's my love affair with the university. I am grateful that I had the opportunity to defend my dissertation in August of 2024. My dissertation looked at the life and works of Yulia Kristeva. I'm interested in motherhood, depression, loss, mourning, psychoanalysis, and object relations theory.
Just that. Okay, thank you, Sehrish. And Moein, how about you introduce yourself to our audience?
Hello everyone. I'm Moein. I recently completed my master degree in computer science at York University. My area of focus was cybersecurity, mainly on the IoT smart homes and computer networking. I defended my thesis in the last December, and my thesis was mainly on increasing the security of smart homes against the cyber attacks. And yeah, that's it. And before starting my master degree, I was a bachelor in computer engineering in Iran. So, and then I decided to come for my master here as an international student. Very
Thank
happy
you.
to be here.
Yeah, fantastic. Let's get at it. And if you want, all 3 cameras can be on since we're going to pivot back and forth between everybody. So I have a few questions, audience, and you're going to see I'm going to ask just a few of the panelists to respond, just so you know. And sometimes there might be a question that my team behind the scenes wants me to answer. So you're going to see the 4 of us be pretty nimble. So Ariella, I'll start with you. What inspired your decision to pursue a master's degree?
So I was teaching full time for 6 years, and that's what I really wanted to do. That's what I did my undergrad in. And then during COVID, I had a lot of time to think about what I really wanted to do and how I might want to advance my career. And I wanted to be able to become more diverse in my career and have more options. So that's the first answer. But the second answer is my actual research question of what I wanted to study in my master's degree was actually inspired by a student of mine who asked about girls being prayer leaders. And she asked it in a way that made me consider things I had never thought of before, and it made me really want to learn more. So those two things combined made me realize that I wanted to go back to school and I wanted to go back and pursue a master's degree in this topic.
Interesting. You sort of notice things in your life or in your career and you think, I want to think more about that. Sehrish, how about you? Thank you, Ariella. Sehrish.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Cheryl. So I decided to pursue a master's and doctoral degree, honestly, because of my course learning in the humanities during my undergrad. I took many courses at that time, in between the undergraduate courses, and really it was the professors. They really opened a space for me to think not only critically, but also creatively to explore new ideas. But also, I always had a thirst for learning and a deep desire for knowledge as a person since I was a little girl. And so, in some ways, even now, I don't think learning should ever end. It's just about gaining knowledge and deepening my understanding of the world allows me to understand myself, which is precisely what pursuing both master's and the doctoral degree eventually allowed me to do.
Right. So, Sehrish, I'm going to stay with you if that's okay. Did your undergrad degree prepare you for grad school and the program that you took?
Absolutely. So some of the courses I remember, especially in the latter year, fourth year courses, there were a lot of research component to them, and so they directly those courses made me realize that actually I am ready to get into grad school because they provided me with the technical skills of writing and problem solving and creating and also there's a push for finding your voice in the fourth year and finding your place and that you could take to the next level as you start your graduate school. So some things that you're doing in a small course now you can do full time if that's something you enjoy doing.
Right. Wow. And Moein, how about you? Did your undergrad prepare you in some way for grad school?
I should say yes and no, because my undergrad was mainly in software engineering, and which gives me like a strong foundation in some software development skills. So I was comfortable in my master degree with like the technical side. But I think in grad schools, you need to have different set of skills as well. Like you need to do the independent researching, writing, reading papers, finding the uh, problems that needed to be solved, having the like problem solving mindset, and like these kind of things. So I had to pick up these things by myself and start learning about these things. And also a bit I had to it's funny to say that I had to unlearn some industry-focused habits that I was gaining during my bachelor degree as I was like working in industry as well. So it's kind of, I think, a mix of both of them. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I really like that answer. And just for anybody in the audience starting to freak out, thinking, I don't have the skills or I wouldn't know how to do that. This is what milestones are for. They're called milestones. We're going to teach you little things along the way, your coursework, and little steps along the way in grad school enable you to be able to work independently or aside your supervisor. But Moein, I wanted to ask you, did you have experience as a TA? And can you speak a little bit about the time commitment of that? And I know you
Mhm.
did it at a master's level, so if you can just speak to that a bit.
Yes, sure. As part of my funding package, I had to be a TA. So almost in all semester that I was at York, I was being TA in different courses. Um, the regarding the like overall commitment and the timing, if you get the full TA position, it would be 135 hours per semester, and which for the weekly hours could be varied a bit, but it typically is around like 8 to 10 hours a week. Some weeks are easier, but some weeks, like the midterm or final exams, or some like grading weeks, could be a bit challenging. And the TA commitments are mainly like grading assignments, holding office hours, running lab tutorials, exam invigilations, and like these kind of things. It depends on the course that you are TA as well. And yeah, but I think it was a great experience. It will help you to like solidify your understanding of different concepts. And for my case, it also helped me to better explaining technical stuff to other students as well.
Yeah, so TA, I should have said that, everybody in the audience. TA means teaching assistant. And in grad school, it's an option. It brings more funding because it's a sort of a paid position. But I like what you said because I think the best way to learn something is to teach it, to figure out how do I
Exactly.
break it down and articulate it in a way, in a scaffolded way. So awfully cool there. Okay, I'll try and stop talking because I just love all your answers. Um, Sehrish, do you know anything about the types of scholarship opportunities that exist or that at least existed for you?
Yeah, so aside from when we talked about the TA-ship, which it becomes nice part of your funding model, especially at the PhD level, I'm personally incredibly grateful for the scholarships I received at your university because honestly, they allowed me to focus on my studies without this like added stress of financial pressure. So there's external opportunities like the OGS and the SHIRK. There are lots of internal awards that I found at York. You know, there's a nice later on you can apply for things like provost dissertation scholarship. I had the opportunity to apply to the Penelope Jane Glassier scholarship. We had a few from the graduate women's studies in my master's. But there are lots of internal, external ones. They're community-oriented ones that I was able to apply as a grad student as well. But yeah, I found that you need to use your research skills once again to look for those, but they can provide an incredible opportunity to fully dedicate yourself to the research and the academic work without having to kind of worry about paying for your bread and butter.
Yeah. And so I will say to folks and all of you in the audience, we're hoping that you end up choosing York for sure to pay attention to your email. Because you get lots of email and they have lots of information, like about when awards and scholarships, the applications are due and the different ones. And also your program will send out information about it as well. So try and get in the habit of not deleting emails, save it for later to sort of read. Okay, very cool. So this one, I stayed with you, Sehrish, one last time, and then I'll go to Moein. Did you have any research experience going into your degree? If yes, if no, how did that affect your experience? Because a lot of our prospective students are worried. They're thinking, oh, I don't know this and I don't know that.
Absolutely. So, did I have any research experience going into my degree? I did because my undergraduate degree prepared me really well for grad school, especially in thinking about communicating through writing. Honestly, like I feel that I'm a really big advocate for liberal arts education because it really teaches you to think critically, structure your arguments, engage with complex ideas across disciplines, especially in the humanities. And so, writing skills and strong writing skills and research that could be developed through research, through essays and research papers. And honestly, it helps you articulate your ideas and thoughts very clearly and confidently. And so, I'm grateful that these communication skills were actually gained through my seminars, and it strengthened my ability to stay in academic dialogue and defend my ideas. But the thing about graduate school, I find, is that it also helps you develop and build research skills, and that is becomes your academic foundation. I just made sure to enroll in courses that focus on the skills I needed to thrive. And so I intentionally took courses where I felt I was weak, and it helped me grow and become confident in the work that I
Mhm.
did.
Mhm. It's so important. And I'm sure all three of you could talk about how you chose your electives. We won't talk about that unless there's time. But I like the idea of choosing electives. There's compulsory courses, but then electives that grow you, also that are areas of interest. I love that. That's being self-directed. Awesome. Moin, how about you in response to this question?
Honestly, I didn't have that much experience, I mean, research experience in my field. I had the courses and the other things, but as I got like from different universities, it was completely different for myself.
Mm-hmm.
At first, it was truly it was overwhelming. I had to read papers, figuring out what's been done, coming out with original ideas that wasn't like before and that wasn't published before. And for example, I remember that like in the beginning, it took 1 week for me to read just one paper and understand what they are talking about and what is their solution. And like for now, it's like for me, it's 1 hour. I just want to compare these like milestone. The key things for me was my supervisor and the lab mates. As like in the master degree, you will have the research and development with the team. So they helped me a lot to guide me through the process, and they made a huge difference for me.
Yeah, and some of the more STEM, I guess, programs, science, technology, those sorts of things have more of a lab and they have more of a team approach. And some other programs, I think women's studies, nursing, interdisciplinary studies, perhaps Serish's programs, plural, you're more of an independent researcher, but that doesn't mean you're alone. And we're going to talk about the importance of a supervisor soon. Okay. Just to close that question around, did you have research experience? Just to allay some of the fears in the room, is you don't have to come in being a rock star researcher. You come in with passion to learn and a desire to get feedback. I think if you're open to feedback, you're going to grow. And we teach you how to research at York in grad studies. Okay. Okay, Ariella, I'm over to you with this one. I wanted to ask you, what did your day-to-day life look like as a grad student? So, for example, how much time was spent in the classroom, in the field, doing field work, hanging out with your supervisor, those sorts of things.
So I was doing my research during COVID and it was entirely online. So even when I was in class, I was actually at home in class. So for my first year, I was mostly taking classes and I was doing some writing. I was also applying for ethics clearance so that I would be able to do the research, and I was really trying to learn everything that I needed to learn in order to do my research. In my second year, I did take a few more classes because there were gaps in my knowledge that I needed to fill in. And I also was mostly rewriting a lot of the things that I had written in the first year now that I learned more and I had a lot more knowledge. Their second year was actually, I was doing the actual research with the participants. So I had a bunch of individual interviews, I had a focus group, but that was actually a very small part. It was a combination of going to classes, meeting with my supervisors, and I met with them on a regular basis, independent writing. And I also joined a couple of different writing groups that I did. So one of my supervisors was supervising several students. So we would all get together and we had kind of a cohort and we would talk to each other. And even though we had different topics, they aligned in some way. And then we actually formed a subgroup of people who met in that group and we would do writing together. We would set a timer and we'd all write for a certain amount of time and take a break. And we really would keep ourselves accountable. So I would say it was primarily a lot of reading and taking notes and writing, and a more small but very significant amount of the actual speaking to participants and writing up the research.
Mm-hmm. I got caught up in that. I'm trying to think where I'm supposed. Okay, Moein, how about you? Can you talk about the day-to-day for you as a grad student? Thanks, Ariella.
Yeah, definitely. First of all, I want to highlight that how it's the whole the almost the 2 years is going to be for any students. So for the students that are in Faculty of Science and I think the engineering, you need to finish your master degree. I mean, it depends on your degree as well, but in 5 to 6 semesters normally, and you need to take 4 to 5 or 6 courses during your study. So for me, I took those courses and with recommendation from my supervisors in the first 2 semesters. So the first 2 semesters was completely different with the last semesters. So for the semester that I didn't have any courses, it was like a full-time job. I was going to a laboratory from 9 to 5, and that was it. It was pretty simple. We were doing the research side. We have the normal weekly meetings. both with the supervisor and with the lab mates for different projects that we have. And for the first 2 semesters that I had the courses, I had to go to the classes also, and in the evening I need to work on the assignments and projects that are related to those courses. And in parallel, in all of those semesters, I had to do the TA things as well. So I normally doing those stuff if it was possible in the evening. And yeah, that was kind of the basic structure of my daily.
Yeah. I'm just thinking back to the research question that we had, and I understand that we've had a question in the Q&A about research assistantships. So they're different. Like a teaching assistantship is where you are paid to teach an undergrad, maybe seminar, and do some marking under the guidance of a professor. Sometimes there's research assistantship roles that pop up. Sometimes I've hired students, perhaps we'll get a chance to talk about if any of you have been RAs. But what an RA-ship is meant to do is continue to grow your research skills and your capacity. It gives you a bit of money. And it's again under the guidance and support of a researcher like myself who has a project and stuff. So maybe Ariella, maybe I'll just get you to talk about, I know you had an experience being an RA for a while. Can you speak about that off the top of your head? I've given you no notice. Okay. And maybe it benefited you.
It was actually a wonderful experience being a research assistant because it gave me a chance to kind of see things differently, and it was somewhat connected to my course of study, but it was also different in some ways. It wasn't exactly my focus, so I got to experience other things and I got to learn a lot more. And I felt very proud of myself because I really got to contribute to something bigger. Like we were doing actual research that's going to be published and is going to have results and is going to make an impact on different communities. And I felt like I got to be just a small part of that. So it was a very meaningful and enjoyable experience.
Yeah. Okay, so I hope that answers, thank you for that off the top of your head. Fantastic job there. How about this, Arielle? I'll stay with you. What advice would you give to somebody in their third year undergrad who's starting to go, should I apply to grad school? Should I do a master's? What would you say?
So for someone in their third year who's thinking that they might want to apply to grad school, I would say, first of all, definitely if you're in a field and you want to do possibly graduate school in that field, which I assume would be the case, or something somewhat relevant to that field, I would say firstly get to know your professors, go to their office hours, talk to them, ask them about their research because they're the ones who have done it before. If you have a TA, speak to your TA. They're the ones who are doing it right now, and they'll be able to give you real perspectives and they will be honest with you. They'll tell you the challenges, they'll tell you the things that are good, and you can tell them your situation, you can tell them why you're interested in it, and they can give you real and honest advice about whether this would be something that would work for you and how you can make it work for you. I would say also get to know the other students in your program. Say, hey, is anybody else thinking this is what I'm thinking? I might want to take this further because it's much easier when you have people that you can collaborate with. I would also say save the course readings if you're studying something that you then want to continue studying further, even maybe if you're not sure. Save the course readings. If your professor says something's important, like make a note of that, write down the important concepts because they're basically curating what they're teaching you and you can use those things. You can use those same sources. You can base your thesis, you can use those same people who they've noted. So I would say
Awesome.
those are the main things. Get to know your professor, the other students, save the course readings, and just kind of see if you can have a plan. Like, how is this practically speaking going to work in my life?
Okay, thank you. And Sehrish, how would you answer that question? What advice would you give to someone in their third year or fourth year of undergrad thinking, maybe I want to do a master's?
I'm going to invert that question a little bit, if you don't mind, Cheryl. First, I actually really don't believe in giving advice, especially when you're trained in psychoanalysis. I think that people already have the intuition and answers to their own questions. But if I were to give advice to my own younger self in the third year of undergrad, when I was considering my master's, I'd say this to the young Sehrish. I would say if you want to own your education, if you want to think creatively, if you want to improve your writing, thinking, and communication skills, along with sharpening your technical abilities, then come to grad school. Go to grad school. Pushing myself through my master's and PhD made a huge difference in how I show up, how I solve problems, and how I think creatively about the world. It was a very long journey for me, but as of now, it transformed how I engage in the world. And I was, with that question, I was going to write a whole essay, Cheryl, because that's what you guys have trained me to do, but I'll stop right there.
Yeah, I love that. We have that a little intuition. And what I'm taking away from this is if you're thinking about it, then do it. You know, there's something inside you. You have an itch that needs to be scratched. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love
Absolutely.
that. Okay. So this is for Sehrish, how independent is the research of the students? Do students work with a supervisor or do they work with other students? What do you think about that? And then I'm going to go to Moein on afterwards.
Well, I would say it really depends on the relationship that you want to build with your supervisor or with other students and how you want to shape your work. So, what I loved about graduate studies, it allows you to complement all of those. So, I loved working independently on my writing, but I truly valued my supervisor's feedback. And so, when I first started graduate school, both in my master's and PhD, it did feel a bit alienating because no one is holding your hands anymore. And not that they really did in undergrad studies, but it starts to feel a bit of a more alienating experience. You feel like you're on your own. But I feel like that's a really important experience because it does prepare you. I'm going to call it the real world.
Mm.
In some ways, you have to sit with that alienation and make sense of it by finding meaning and passion in your work. So I learned to connect with other students in the program. I learned to connect with other supervisors, other professors, my director. And so even though it felt isolating for some of us, those of us I found who embraced the work, the process, and took ownership of their education, their formed a relationship with their research. They eventually, those of us who did that, we eventually found deeper connection and meaning through our own work. And so that in and of itself, when you can give a language to that alienating experience, I think was really, really important to the process to find meaning in your work.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. And Moein, how about you in terms of how independent you have it when you're in the STEM and the sciences and the technology? It's a tad different. Why don't you speak to your experience?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both. Uh, Regarding the master degree, I should say that there are two aspects. The first one is your thesis. So in your thesis, you are working solely on your thesis that you are gonna like defend in the future. In that one, you're mainly work with your supervisor. So at the beginning, you rely on your supervisor and maybe your lab mates a lot since you're new to the research area, and they will help you to like get familiar and become more familiar with the idea. Over time, you become more independent. And like in my case, I started with my supervisor guidance, but I gradually took ownership of my research. You still collaborate, but eventually you need to derive your own work. So at the beginning, you work with others. They will teach you how to do the research, how to like come up with the ideas. And at the end, like at the first year or when you're senior, you will help others. So uh, this is the both sides. And regarding like I said, the first part is your thesis. The other part is as you mentioned, the RA positions. There are some projects with even in your laboratory. So you are going to participate in those, and those are definitely our teamworks. We had the projects with the industries, and so in those projects, you need to collaborate with like not just your lab mates and your supervisor, but also with the industry partners. So yeah, that's the case. I think it's a mix of both independent and
Yeah,
dependent. Yeah.
I like that. I like the mix. Also, your supervisor will try to gauge when you're ready to sort of step out on your own and do a little bit. And you also want to be able to share with your supervisor, I feel wobbly yet. I don't feel ready yet. You know, or can I call you right after an interview, or can we process things? So communication is super important. You're never on your own. And whatever you do, don't isolate yourself, all of you that are going to come to York for grad, you know, stay connected. Okay, Moein, how about you? How do you feel you developed over the course of your master's?
Mm, Okay. Uh, well, I think my graduate experience has been like transformative. Initially, I was focused on mainly the coursework and adapting to the research environment and learning the area. Over time, I developed critical thinking, problem-solving skills, and generally a deeper understanding of my field. I also become more independent in my research, learning how to formulate hypotheses, design experiments, and like analyzing the results data. Beyond the technical skills, I think I got improved in communication, whether it was through the writing papers or presenting at conferences or even like mentoring new students. So I think generally the experience has like made me more confident and more prepared for future challenges in both academia and like industry. Once I like look back to the last 2 years, how I was like started and like comparing to now, I think I got those skills
Yeah,
because
yeah, wow. Okay, how about you, Ariella? What do you think? How did grad school, how do you feel you developed over the course of your grad degree?
So I feel I want to echo what Moin said. I definitely gained those skills that he spoke about as well. I definitely gained knowledge, and whenever I gained knowledge, I felt like I had even more questions that I wanted to then look into and I wanted to answer. I gained confidence, and I think I really developed confidence during my course of my graduate degree at York because I realized at the end I accomplished something big, and I'm able to share that. And now I have been sharing that. And another thing is, I would say, resilience and also humility. And those things kind of go hand in hand because I was getting feedback from my supervisors and also from my peers. And I learned to know that sometimes it's important to say, oh, it's really important to me. I want to do it this way, but I
Mm.
also needed to learn when to say, oh, no, you're actually right about that. I didn't think of it that way. I'm going to do it this way instead because I really value what your perspective is. So
Mhm.
that's an important skill that I got doing my master's that I definitely took with me afterwards.
Mhm. Yeah, you never knew, I guess, signing up for grad school that courage might be a side effect, but it seems like courage grows. Yeah, there's a question in the chat, and I'm going to answer it, Eileen, if that's all right. And it's if there's a single resource that students find most helpful. I'm going to say your program handbook. And cue your eye rolls, all of you, thinking, oh, the professor said the handbook. But that's where the material is. Your requirements, your milestones, the learning outcomes, the what courses you have to take, all of it is in there. So that's how I would answer that one. So, okay, Ariel, I'm going to come to you. Was there a difference between what you thought would happen or what you thought a master's degree or your program would be, and then what actually happened?
Yes, well, I thought that it would be primarily talking to participants and that end of the research. And I also thought that I could cover much more topics in my research. I had a very lofty goal. I thought maybe it would be a combination, some qualitative, some quantitative, and answer several different questions. And then as soon as I started, I realized and I was advised that that's definitely not going to happen. So it took me a while to really clarify what my research topic was because I started out with something that was too broad. And even though the best part was my research with the participants, that was the smallest part. There was a lot of buildup in advance, so I would be ready for it. And there was a lot at the end to unpack. So oh, additionally, I wasn't I wasn't sure what I thought and what would happen. I wasn't sure if I would be in person or not because I was doing this during COVID. I thought maybe some of the classes might have been in person, but it turns out that the only thing I did in person in my whole 2 years was the thesis defense. And even at the thesis defense, several of the people who were evaluating, they were the external examiners, several of them were actually online.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that's over. Knock on wood. No more pandemics, right? Thank you, Ariella. Sehrish, how about you? Was there a difference between what you thought would happen? Let's think about your PhD and what you thought the program would be, and then what actually happened.
I thought I was going to get an education, but my professors, program directors, and supervisors, they all kind of pushed me to own one. And honestly, there's a big difference between that. So throughout my graduate studies, I was constantly challenged and pushed to find my voice and my place in the world. And so the younger, more naive version of me just wanted the three letters, the PhD after my name. I think I was running for that, but in the process, I feel like I gained and learned so much more. I'm gonna say back to one of the things that Moein and Ariel were talking about, the idea of becoming more confident, sharpening my problem-solving skills. I learned to write and communicate in ways that I never ever thought I could possibly do. And I know I'm echoing myself here again when I say this, but I truly do believe that's the power of graduate education. It teaches you how to think, speak, and engage with the world in a very deeper, more meaningful way. And learning those technical skills along with those communication skills allow you to enter into the workforce.
Now, Sarah, there's a question in the chat that's specifically for you. Since I'm with you, I'm just going to ask you directly. I'll just ask it to you. We did hear from two alum from master's programs about what a typical day is like. Some of our audience is wondering, what about a typical day for a PhD student? And can you speak from your experience off the top of your head?
Absolutely. So the most beautiful thing that happened for me during my PhD is that I learned to balance my professional and personal life. So the age that I was when I started my PhD, I had a family, and so as a mom of small children, I had to figure out how I was going to balance the two. And honestly, grad school really opened up space for that. So a day in a life or a week in a life was that I could designate my courses in the way that they fit into my time frame. So we were required to take 6 courses. You have about 1 or 2 years to finish those courses, and then the rest of 2 years. Okay, there you go, 2 years. I continued to take courses because I wanted to develop my skills in different areas, especially my writing and communication. So that was that. And then there's a teaching assistantship, so TA-ship that you have, and you can manage with that. And then there's a writing component. And so the first 2 years I dedicated to just focusing on finishing my courses, teaching, and then the last couple of years that were left into the funding years, I focused on my writing. And yeah, it really, I feel like it allows you to have the way that it's constructed, the PhD is constructed, it allows you to have a balance between your life and work.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that off the top of your head. I know that's not always easy, but if I may stay with you, I just wanted to ask you this. Was there a moment that something clicked? This elusive teachers, we live for this, when things click with our student. Was there a moment when something clicked for you and your perspective sharpened?
Yes, so it was actually returning from an illness during my graduate studies, 2-year illness that things shifted for me. So before my long leave, I was actually my work was focused on post-colonial theory. But after coming back, I found myself drawn towards different research, which was a maternal loss and psychoanalysis. And so actually it was this particular graduate course that I found gave me the intellectual permission to explore this new direction, which felt more authentic than anything I was writing before. And so I love that we've had this flexibility to work on what truly resonated with me. And so that click that you're talking about, where my perspective sharpened, it's actually when I made that switch to this form of writing that spoke to me authentically. I found that I became more sharper and more passionate, in the way that I started to show up for my writing that had never happened before.
Interesting. Thank you for that. How about you, Moein? Did you have a click?
Well, yeah, actually, there were a few moments when things become much more clear for me. One key moment I remember that, uh, like, you know, that in your master degree, or I mean, in any graduate studies, you have both like research and the development side, at least like in this science and engineering. So the moment that you apply the like your research parts into the development. Like you have read papers, you have seen ideas, but when you are developing them, like designing them, that could be very interesting. So for my case, I remember that we had a project for smart home security. We needed to design some cyber attack scenarios to, for example, without accessing to the smart home, open the like door lock. So we have been studied like how to do this and have like bring the devices and all the infrastructure. But I remember that at the moment that we like successfully launched that attack scenarios and it works, it kind of hit me that like, oh my God, like we can do this. And
Right.
like actually I can do this. Like and
Yeah.
another thing was that like we have these infrastructures. I cannot do these things like getting these ideas like and these experience outside the university. So I was thinking like in the last year I have decided to come to this university. If I was going to another one, maybe they didn't allow me like to have these infrastructure, to have these kind of things. And because we have these laboratory and these like infra, I was able to do it. And like the confidence that it gave me, it was like the most important thing for me.
Mhm.
So that was the main moment for me. Yeah.
Thank you. How about Ariella? Did you have a click?
So when I was writing up my thesis, what I used to do was I would read other people's theses just to kind of get advice, and sometimes I would try and make mine sound like them or try and make mine match. Like I would say, how does this person write a discussion chapter, and how does that person write their discussion chapter? And it ended up making me very confused and very frustrated because they were all kind of different, and then I couldn't find the algorithm of how to make mine the bet like had what points I had to hit in order to make mine sound like that and like be the ultimate discussion chapter. So it sounds very simple, but when I realized that basically just trying to make it sound like me, make the thesis sound like me, and that there's so many different ways, mine only has to be unique to me. I feel like that really gave me the click to move forward with more confidence and
Mhm.
to say, okay, mine doesn't have to match, doesn't have to be exactly the same. It's going to be a unique thesis.
Mhm. It reminds me of Sarah saying something about finding your voice. It's interesting. It's a good lesson for supervisors to not let their students waffle in trying to figure out an algorithm too. So fantastic. Knowing this is for Moein and then Ariella, knowing what you know now, because you're so wise. And if you could speak to your former self as you were entering the masters for both of you, what would you tell that self to do or to be aware of? Moein, we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. Well, I will tell myself a couple of things. I think the first and most important thing is to be patient and not get discouraged in the early stages. As you in your research path, at the beginning, you're exploring different domains, checking different things, and it could be a bit frustrating. Like in the first 2, 3 months, you are just searching, reading, and there's no result. Yeah, so the most important thing is to be patient and continue. Research is different from like coursework, or if you have the industry experience, it's completely different, and it takes some time to develop the necessary skills. And but once you get these skills, it would be like much easier and much more fun.
Mhm.
And also, I would advise learning time management, as there are lots of different projects and things like you have your coursework, you have your research, tier responsibilities. If you are international students, you need to do lots of things for your daily life. And so the time management is the key as well. And regarding the like academical growth and the other things, I think networking with other students and professors, being in the conferences, and like being in different events at the university would be very helpful.
Great. How about you, Ariella? How would you answer that?
I would definitely echo what what Moein said about time management. So even if you're studying full time, you're still doing other things in your life and you have to be able to manage that. So in general, I would say my advice would be to myself, don't stress because you will get it done, even if it seems like you're never going to be able to do it in the moment. And also make connections with other students because that's really what's going to help you, the collaboration. And then on a more practical level, what I would tell myself is to take a research methods class right away because it informs everything that you do. And research at a graduate level, I found out is very different than research at an undergrad level. So I did do a little bit of research when I was an undergrad, but the expectations were very different. So I would tell myself just get that out of the way and make sure that you have that locked down.
Okay, so this is for Arielle and Sehrish. I'm going to move us back to an earlier question that I believe you prepared around supervisor. So I want to bring us to that before we transition and think a little bit about jobs and such. So give you a second to just get ready for that. We'll start with Ariella if you're okay. How did you find or approach a supervisor? What was that process like?
Interdisciplinary studies is a very unique program because we needed to have three supervisors, one from every discipline. And I don't know how it is with other programs or how it is for interdisciplinary studies now, but when I was applying for it a few years ago, I had to already have the three supervisors lined up before I applied. I had to write that on the application that they were people who were willing to supervise me. So what I did was I reached out to professors who I had known from my time in undergrad at York, and I told them what my research question was, and I was really specific about how I felt like I could really benefit and be so privileged to have them supervise me. So, I know that you have so much experience researching X, and my research really connects to that. And I tried to really be respectful when I reached out to them and make the case that I would just be so privileged to work with them. And I was very grateful that the professors that I reached out to did respond. And the relationship that I had with my supervisors was very important because in interdisciplinary studies, everybody was combining three disciplines, but they were all completely different disciplines. So we didn't really have much in common with each other. We could provide moral support, but we couldn't actually support each other in our topics. So it really came down to having supervisors that were very supportive, and I was very grateful that I did.
Mhm. Thank you for that. And Sehrish, how about you? How did you find or approach a supervisor when you were?
Yeah, so specifically my PhD supervisor, I found my supervisor through working with my graduate program director and taking his recommendation after kind of sitting down around, he had interview questions for me around my research and my work and what I hope to do. So I wasn't afraid to interview for my potential supervisors to see if they are a good fit and to shop around for the right one. I don't think there's anything wrong with that because it is again a working relationship, and you need to make sure that supervisor aligns with your research. And I had lots of meeting with them. And so one of the important thing I want to say is about working relationship is that it's really important to develop an open relationship, working relationship. The project that is one of the things that my supervisor used to say that I really appreciated is that project is about learning to work relationally with your supervisors, and it's a skill that you are going to need. And so having that working relationship is really important.
Yeah, I don't know how many times you said relationship, but the more the better because it is a relationship grounded in dignity, shared dignity, each other's dignity. Fantastic. I love that. I'm going to move around a little bit. Yeah, so be ready for that. There are a lot of questions in the chat about navigating ethics approval, so one can do the research, and also being able to do research with populations rendered vulnerable through structural violence, for example, or doing research in other countries. Big, big, big questions. What I can say is a lot of that is talked about in a research methods course. Navigating research ethics is done with your supervisor, should be going through the whole form, figuring things out, and also thinking through around what is necessary and not necessary when one wants to do research with a population rendered vulnerable. And so we think a lot about exploitation. We think a lot about the rights of participants and such. For research across countries, there's often a risk assessment that's done so that you're safe and what you're planning to do is safe. I read one that a student said that there was no risk, and we found out that they were going somewhere where there were active volcanoes. What? And so it was pretty funny. So we move them a little bit away from that area. Okay, Sehrish, I want to ask you this question, and then I'm going to go back around some work transition questions. And that is, can you speak to a biggest challenge during your degree? So that's way down number 17 when we were planning. So what is the biggest challenge either during your degree or in creating a career? I'm not sure where you took that in your prep.
What was the biggest challenge either during or creating a career? Yeah, okay, so right, I did think this one through. So honestly, I keep talking about finding my voice, but that was the biggest challenge. And the reason why, because there were so many external directions, you know, social media, family, friends, and even well-meaning professors. And it was easy to be pulled in different directions. So it took a really long time to to reflect and tune out the noises and discover what truly mattered to me. And so one of the things that I want to say around that is like finding your voice isn't an overnight process or your passion for your work. It really does require lots of patience, self-awareness, and this courage to trust your instincts. I found it to be yeah, one of the challenge.
Yeah, so a big challenge being pulled in multiple directions. And I bet you in interdisciplinary studies, that was also a thing with 3 different sort of lenses on things. But Ariella, I want to just ask you a question around what was it like transitioning into the workforce after finishing your grad degree?
So, okay, so transitioning into the workforce,
Yeah,
I was
15.
okay. So I was really happy to be able to use what I had learned in a practical way, and I do believe that getting this degree was the foot in the door to being hired because I did start a new job after I had graduated, and this is what made them consider me. I had something that stood out. I had something that was different than what other people had when they were applying. And I was using what I had learned in a very practical way. So broadly, I was researching about how girls learn to pray in Jewish day schools. I was learning about pedagogical practices, the historical context, perspective from educators, and perspective from women who had this experience. And now I actually am teaching prayer in a Jewish day school, and I can bring all of those things. And I'm able to work with my colleagues to create opportunities for girls to take on a leadership role in their Jewish and religious practices. So I actually, even though I was originally hired for something else, I just love being in the classroom, and I did come back full circle to teaching.
You certainly had something. I want to get us to our final question, but I don't want to miss asking Moein to just talk a little bit about, as an international student, how did you integrate into Canadian culture, and were there resources at York? Just briefly, I'm sorry to say briefly.
Yeah, no worry. Well, I think Toronto is an incredibly diverse city, and that made my integration much easier. People are from all over the world, and so you don't feel like an outsider. There are no issues with like discriminations or racism, and like generally everyone is welcoming. Regarding the York side, there are like various student clubs and committees that help international students, and they have social events like networking opportunities or even the academic supports. So I think it was easy for me to integrate to the new culture, new country, and the new area.
Yeah. And there's York International, and I know that that's been put into I assume it's been put into the chat. So listen, we have 4 minutes left. I know some of us have to get to work. Why choose York? I guess I want to close us with that. Why choose York University for grad school? Let's start with Sehrish.
Thanks, Cheryl. For me, it was the professors. It was my undergraduate degrees. It was the opportunities for research, the endless opportunities for growth, for my growth mindset, and I'm gonna say it in one word. It felt like home. It has always felt like home.
Fantastic, thank you. How about you, Moein? Why choose York for grad school?
Mm.
And we'll go to you,
Uh,
Ariella, last.
Yeah, the same as Sehrish mentioned. I think it was mainly for the professors and the the research support that they provided for the students. And for example, for my case, for my thesis, I needed to set up a smart home test bed. It cost around 5,000 Canadian dollar, and we were able to easily support the funding to provide the whole test bed. And so, if I want to conclude this, at first the professors and then the research supports and the facilities that York will provide for you.
Wonderful. Ariella, over to you. Why choose York for grad studies?
So when I was considering a master's degree, I looked at different programs in different schools. And when I found the website for interdisciplinary studies at York, their tagline was students who know what they want to do and they need a place to do it in. And I read about what some of their current students were working on, and that really decided it for me. York has very unique programs. You can be specific and you'll be supported in that. And I really felt like I couldn't do that anywhere else.
Yeah, wow, I could talk to you three for another couple hours, but I just want to thank you so much. I'm hoping our audience is seeing themselves in you, are able to feel that they can choose York for their grad studies and that they will be successful. And stay in touch, everybody. We have other events coming forward with Choose Grad York all week. And at any point, if you have questions, there's the email in the chat. Please don't hesitate to reach out. So thank you, Ariella, Moein, and Sehrish. And bye for now, everybody.